Good evening, my friend.
Hey.
How are you doing?
Good.
What?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you good, yeah.
Good, so I'm in a good spot here. There you go.
Awesome.
Indeed.
So this is the pre-show stuff. Welcome, Deke. This is the pre-show stuff. We're getting some comments coming in. We have Rosanna all the way in Brazil.
Nice.
Meat looks like he's working on a mullet.
Who was that said? Who is that?
I'm not 100% certain, but Meat looks like he's working on a mullet. And the contrarians themselves cannot wait to get going.
Oh, wow.
We have Mr. Kevin buried on Mars, so we'll be talking to this guy tonight, Martin POPOFF. And please, everyone, if you would like to leave a comment for Martin, tell him what your favorite book is. Got a question for Martin, drop it below. Can't guarantee we're going to get to them because, well, we have plenty of our own. But, please, if you've got something you want to say to Martin, leave a comment. We'll try to put it on the screen. Can't believe we're talking to this guy tonight, boys.
Indeed.
Oh, this is Holland. And we have Chris Sarr joining us and Sebastian Xavier Meunier. Meet for President 2024.
Wow, that's
I'm not sure if I would go that far. I am not sure.
I don't know if that's a good idea.
Harrison Kopp, all the way from Australia, believes he has some contrarian competition. So gentlemen, first of all, before we get going with the actual show, you'll know when the show is starting because you'll see the LeBrain Train theme song by T-Bone Erickson rolling. But before we get going with that, Deke, what did you do? Did you just message Martin out of the blue and say, "Do you want to be on my buddy's YouTube show?"
Yeah, I just shot him message through Messenger and just said, just told him about our deal and that we've been lucky that we've had guys like the Storm Force guys on. We had Brett Jensen. If he wanted to come on and just talk about his books, we'll talk about music in general. And right away he got back to me and he said, "Yeah, sure." And he said, just this was before Christmas, and he just said, hit me up shortly in the new year. So I did last week, and he said, "How about the 15th?" And yeah, no fear. Oh yeah, no fear. So pretty cool stuff. I mean, it's pretty neat. And I explained to them that, like I told you guys, we're a small fish in a big stream pond.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
We're just music guys, man, and we just want to talk about his books because we all like his writing and we like his stuff, and maybe we can help push a bit of his product tonight. I mean, he's such a great writer. I mean, I don't have to tell you guys that. So
see the banner below. And you know what? I'll just show something really quick, because I love that he does this. But every single book that you order from him comes, personalized.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this is the Scorpions
my buddy
book.
Scott Hunter said the same thing.
Yeah.
They're
A
always
little
personalized.
pun, Instead of "I really had a blackout," it's "I really had a book out."
It's good.
Yeah. So
The contrarians are not surprised that Martin's really cool.
Yeah. Wow. No. That goes without a given. I mean, you just watch him on YouTube, and he's just like a chill guy who loves music, and it totally comes across.
Is that the guy from the Contrarian show that is
from their YouTube channel, apparently?
Yeah. I've watched a few of those, man. They're great.
Let's do a quick roundup of the T-shirts. As you can see, I'm wearing Blotto this evening from Buffalo, New York.
I'm wearing a Clockwork Angel shirt.
One of these things is not like the other. And Kevin is just saying hello to everybody.
And the Lakehead dad thing is our university, Lakehead University. So my daughter Lauren bought me a hoodie a few years ago from there. That's the closest I ever got into the university, is this. So there you go. There's the backstory to it. My favorite hoodie.
Well, I believe our star has just arrived.
Nice.
So why don't we roll that theme song and we'll get on with the show. Welcome to the LeBrain train, ladies and gentlemen.
Ticket to anywhere and a glazed donut to go. All aboard.
Hey!
Guys?
Please welcome Martin Popoff to the show.
Yeah, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you great.
Everything's good.
Yes.
Okay, good. Excellent.
Indeed.
Martin, before we get started, I'd just like to say, you and I, we've been in touch for a few years over the email, but you are kind of, sort of, the guy that's kind of, sort of responsible for me even doing this tonight.
Right.
Many, many years ago, this book floated into our lives. Uncle Meat, a mutual friend of ours named Tom, and we passed the book around to each other like it was the Holy Bible. and we would be in here like, Budgie. Wow, who are these bands? And this book came with me through my life, and I said to myself, if somebody would be willing to read a book about heavy metal reviews, I've got about 2,000 albums too. I should start writing reviews.
Right.
And that's sort of why we're here tonight, is because I'm kind of got the idea that I could be the knockoff Popoff.
Sure.
Yeah.
Go for it.
So thank you so much. I'd like to introduce to you my good friend over here to my left, I guess, Eric, a.k.a. Uncle Meat, who is a gigantic fan of your YouTube presence.
Cool. Excellent.
And, of course, Derek, a.k.a. Deke, who...
I know Derek. Yeah.
Derek is the man who invited you here this evening.
Yeah.
And according to internet etiquette, that means that Derek gets to go first with his first question of the night, I guess.
All right.
How about it, Deke? We all we have a kind of a theme here. Independently, we all kind of came up with top 5 lists.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll let Deke start.
Hey, Martin.
Hey. Yeah. How are you?
I'm good. So, like Mike said, we each took a different route for our top 5 of what you've done. So what my top 5 is, are what my 5 favorite books of yours are. And I like to talk a bit about them. And by all means, fill in the gaps for me. So are you ready?
Sure. Let's do it.
Okay. I got some honorable mentions here first. Okay.
Okay.
The first one is Ye Old Metal from 1979.
Right? Yeah.
Now, the thing I like about your books, Martin, and I told you this before, and I'm going to tell the world now, is you write about bands that weren't necessarily the mega selling big acts of the day. And Ye Old Metal 79 features one of the bands that was probably the fourth band I ever got into after Kiss, Cheap Trick, Judas Priest, and that was the self-titled New England album.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And that was just by the Paul Stanley connection, because I was a fanboy of Kiss, and Paul Stanley produced this band, so I got into it. So you wrote about New England, and that made me buy the book, because like a lot of these bands that or a few of these bands I'm going to talk about, did not get much written about them, even back when they were a band. So what, like New England, did you try, like, how did you reach out to these guys? You just do it how I did, send them a message and say, hey, hey, John Fannin.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back a while, but so that one, I mean, all of those were, each one sold less and less. That's why I haven't done one past 1979. It sold the least out of all of them. But I just loved tracking down. I figured there were all these bands I had these burning questions for that I wasn't going to write an entire book on.
Right.
And, I don't know. I guess it just got easy to find one, and then I could get another guy, and then I figured I had enough, and there might be a little outside press on some of these things. But that one's got the Hounds in there as well, right? The Hounds put the dog, which I just love that record. It's so cool. I thought that record should have been way bigger than it was. But that was a weird year in metal. And, I've got a few more past 1979 of these single essays on albums, but so far they've just been as ebooks at Zunior.com for 99 cents, right? So there's a bunch of those into the 80s. There's enough to make probably 2 books that are out that aren't on print or in print in any way. But that book didn't sell that well, and I've got a lot of them, and that's kind of why I stopped. Every publisher has always told me, when you do a series of books, you could lop off 20% for every second and third one in the series, because that's what's going to happen. And then you get them orphaned all the time. You run out of the first one. You still got some of the second one, and they're not going to sell now and stuff, though. But that was it. It was gratifying doing that series for sure.
Cool. And another honorable mention. I got 2 more to go here. So, anyways, my other one is the Van Halen Unchained User Manual. Great read. Mikey's got it too. That's a very, very good read. I mean, there's stuff like I didn't even know about the whole Sammy Hagar Can't Get This Stuff No More that ended up on the greatest hits that he actually kind of wrote for Balance, but then they were going to put it out and Roth changed the lyrics, and there's all that rigmarole. I mean, stuff like that is in the book. When I come across stuff like that, it's just gold to me, because I didn't even know, like, back when it actually all went down. So,
well,
that was another.
You say fill in the blanks. There's a big story behind that book. It's not long, fortunately, but basically, it started as a Black Sabbath, like my Black Sabbath FAQ, as part of that FAQ story series, right? So they wanted me to do one, this Backbeat Books. So I did this whole thing, did it exactly like the Black Sabbath one, turned it in, and they said, well, this isn't really what we're with. It's kind of changed lately, this FAQ series, right? And it's like, there's no way I'm redoing this book. So I just gave them back the advance and said, I'm just going to do something with it myself. And then I switched it around, moved it around, so it was less like an FAQ, and did some things I would have wanted to do that were different. That's why it's a grab bag of different things, right? And I like that subtitle, a user manual. I mean, I've never done a book like that, except if you go back and look at the Black Sabbath FAQ, it's very similar, right? Just weird, wonky chapters on all different things, right?
Right.
So it turned out really good. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there. People love it. It's a big, thick book with a lot of stuff in it. So yeah.
Well, I have to commend you, is that you took some killer shots, man. Like, you're a great photographer. I mean, some of these books of your photography, I mean, it's amazing. Like, you had good seats at that 1984 show.
Yeah, a bit of a story about that. I won't go into that. Those pictures, I mean, I kind of have the rights to those pictures, but I didn't shoot those pictures.
Okay. I gotcha. All right, I gotcha.
You could have just taken the compliment.
Yeah, no, but that's way early for me. See, There's no way. I didn't start taking pictures until much later. In fact, I was not a big concert guy. I grew up in a small town in BC, so I didn't go to a lot of concerts, right, for a long time.
Right.
Spokane, Washington was our place to go. And then later when I got into university, I would go to like Vancouver. Well, I was in Vancouver and Victoria, and I saw some shows there. But then I moved to Ontario in 1988, started slowly going to shows. But, not until I got serious and doing interviews and work with Tim Henderson and all that I really started with a lot of shows. So.
Okay, gotcha. So my last special honorable mention is this massive book here called The Top 500 Heavy Metal Songs of All Time, which 18,000 of us submitted our top metal songs. And you had a special person help you out with this book. You want to maybe tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I had my dad work on the map on that. He was retired and stuff, and he was getting into computers more so and stuff. And he was my statistician that laid out the whole massive grid for it. And then when I redid that book recently, because that's so out of date, it's really old now. I redid those as Aces High, the top 250 heavy metal songs of the 80s, and Riff Raff, the top 250 heavy metal songs of the 70s. I got Dad involved all over again to add up all the math. And, but the funny thing about polls like that is it's not that dramatic. Things just move around a little bit when you redo it again. And, a few things drop off at the bottom and a few things go on. But, and those didn't sell that well when I redid them again, because that's the other thing publishers tell me all the time. Don't do books that aren't on one band at a time, because the ones that are on one band at a time always sell way better than anything conceptual. And that's absolutely true through everything I ever did.
Okay. Well, that's, it's still a great read. I mean, I still flip through it. I mean, talking about like Twisted Sister, and it's no difference than, how they were able to sell. They could basically sell back then a $2,000 vacuum, as you put it, on how they, that's a great one. Okay, so now we're into my top 5. So my number 5 book is Live Magnetic Air.
Yeah.
Great read about yet another band I never really knew about, because by the time I got into high school in the early 80s, they were already broken up. So I see when you put this book together, you had a couple of guys help you out. Basically, I guess, super fans, as you called them, Brian and Adrian. And you guys, you just went and did your thing, and you wrote a really good read on basically a band that had 5 gold albums. And by the time that Kim Mitchell left them mid-tour, they were broke. I mean,
nothing to show for it.
Love that band. One of my favorite bands of all time. I wear it. Yeah, I am. I'm wearing the Max Webster right now.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. But the funny story about that book is that there's a lot of typos in it. And it's probably the worst one for typos, which means I haven't reprinted it after I discovered all the typos. And the way I discovered the typos, see this microphone I'm using right here. So this was lent to me by Dave Ulrich, who lives across the street from me. He runs Zunior.com. He was in a big band called the Inbreds here in Canada, right out of Kingston. And so I started doing audio books of a few of my books. I did the Max and one of the Sabbaths and the Priest. I think I did the Blue Oyster Cult, which was a lot of work because it's 10 hours of reading your own stuff. And I started spotting all the typos. And so after that point, it's like, I can't reprint this the way it is. I'm going to have to fix all these typos. And it sold really well. But what I have to do is now go through it and fix everything and add a little bit, because Pi Dubois is a good buddy of mine. I talk to him all the time. I want to expand on it a little. So I got to fix the typos, because to get a relayout done is about $1,000, right? So I've got to give it to my layout guy and say, okay, now we got to redo the files. But I really should put that out again, because it was a good seller.
Yeah, it's really selling for a lot in the secondhand market right now.
It's great.
Yeah.
If I could ask you just one quick question about the Max Webster book, Martin. I know you alluded to in it about even asking Kim Mitchell up front about writing a book about Kim Mitchell. I wonder, I mean, this book is like, I think, 6 years old. So has there been any thought about writing the authentic rock book on akimbo?
Not particularly. It comes
No?
up every once in a while, and it's something that I could even actually do in conjunction with my Toronto publisher ECW. They had some interest in it before, but Kim is a little less famous than he was 5-10 years ago now, because he's not on Q107.
Yeah.
And he just put out this new album, sure, but it's kind of a really light acoustic album. It needs an asterisk up in the corner because it's actually doesn't feel like it's part of the catalog. So, and I don't really keep in touch with Kim very much, but you know, I'm sure if we all had more time, if I had another 50 years of life, it could be one of the things on the pile, because I do think of it every once in a while, and it would probably do okay. But you know, I mean, one day probably Kim will do his memoirs, and there's a 30% chance it'll be with me, and a 60% chance it'll just show up one day, and we'll go, oh well, there, Kim's done his book. So
I know Brian was really eager to ask this question. He asked me earlier if I would ask you how Pi is doing.
Yeah, so Pi's doing great. Good. He almost got caught stranded in Florida. He was very stressed out because he goes back and forth between Florida and London, Ontario. He was quite stressed out and he couldn't get a flight back, but he got a flight back and he's okay now. And we've been talking back and forth about releasing something, working on his poetry. So I've been editing some of his poetry, and I've learned that when you edit Pi, it's exactly like Neil told me in the old days, like you know, you really got to edit it and move things around and stuff, and Pi's sort of fine with that. So we've been slowly talking about that, but he kind of moves really slow on getting all this together. He's supposed to send me a big swack of his poetry, and I would love to see that. That's one project I would love to see, a full poetry book out from Pi.
Terrific. Sorry, Deke, I had to ask that one.
Oh, no, that's all right. So now onto my number 4 is Metal Heart, Aiming High with Accept. Now, as we know, when we buy books from you, you personalize them. This is one of my favorite ones. Can you guys see it?
To Derek, too high to get it right. Right awesome. With a W. Right with a W.
So, Martin, this is another one of these books that I didn't know about this band. I know on your Sea of Tranquility, you did a huge Accept blowout of all their albums. For me personally, I'm from the Accept guy from Rustleston Wild, Balls to the Wall, Metal Heart, and Eat the Heat. There, I said it, and I will let you know that I paid about $10 more for Eat the Heat than you did for $1 back in the day. And the great thing about this book is I love the fact that you dated each Accept record that you bought from when you were like living out in Trail, BC, and you went along of the time of when you bought each record. And
here we go.
Another great read is, the thing I really liked about the book was the whole switch from Udo Dirkenschneider. And because back in the day when I would get Hip Parade or a Circus, they'd say, here's Accept with their new singer. It's like, okay, Udo left, but you never knew the backstory. And that's what I like about your books, is you get into the backstory about the inner goings on with what's actually going out. I mean, in the Accept book, you talk about Rob Armitage and Michael White, who are the two guys that came before actually David Reese was announced as the singer. That I never even knew until I read your book. I was like, wow. And I didn't know that it took them almost 2 years to record Eat the Heat with Dieter Dierks. And of course, we all know how that album sold. So another great read. I mean, I love that book. I mean, well done.
This is the thing that all of that came from, with the let's see, what is it, 1980 here. Let's go even earlier here. So this is where I started putting together all my when I bought albums.
Oh my God. Wow.
See, look at that, 1980, right? So there's Q. So this is where I put that together from the Accept thing.
Oh, nice.
This is like a big duotang binder of all my record purchases by date, by store, when I traded it with someone, what I bought with it at the same time. So here's B. Here's my early Black Sabbath stuff there.
Oh my God!
Wow.
So I
That's
started
amazing.
making this about 1979, 1980, and
Yeah.
in the back it's got some lists and then lists of concerts in my swoopy handwriting at the time. Look at this. The last page is like working. I was making a list of working titles of albums that changed.
Oh my God!
That's awesome.
It's called I Like to Rock, Anvil Test, BOC, The Revolution by Night was Dead Man's Curb, Diamond Head, Canterbury, what does that say? Night of the Swords. And then over here, you get into the, so this was my, high school. There's
The
my high
doodles.
school, back in my social studies, Lemmy. And then you get the
logos.
So this
Nice.
is about 1982, Witch Find. So just all my doodles are part of this stupid, weird book too. But that's why I thought, in that intro to the Accept, because people have told me the favorite part of my books are the introductions. So, because that's when I'm just shooting the shit, right? Just talking, right?
Interesting.
Yeah. And that is a great intro. I mean, that's the one that sticks with me. I thought, wow, this guy is hardcore. He dated all his records. I just go by, I sometimes can remember. I'm pretty good with the month, but I wish I would have done what you did. Like that's so cool. So my number 3 is Swords and Tequila.
Right.
Riot's classic first decade. And thank you, sir, for actually, this one was sold out and you dug it out for me and was able to snag me a copy. So another band that should have been big. I mean, anybody who wants to check out Riot, I think Fire Down Under is one of the greatest unheard metal records ever. I mean, Swords and Tequila, Outlaw, Don't Bring Me Down. It's all there. And, you brought the story. And like I said, I didn't know that, they were opening for Rush when the original singer, Guy Speranza, told the band that I'm quitting. Yeah. And they lost basically all their momentum. I mean, Brett Forrester did a good job too, but man, that guy just had some bad luck. I mean, you talk about how he basically got carjacked, and lost his life. So,
I'll show you something else crazy here. This is a Brett Forrester binder.
What?
Whoa.
And it literally with red on the cover, and it's photos no one's ever seen, promo photos, notes from his mom, things signed by weird contract signed stuff about. Wow. And this was sent to me by a buddy, Todd K. Smith, who had collected all this. And stuff signed by his mom about his death. And there's flyers here. What is this? Enclosed for you, executed copy of the license agreement in connection with the above package. So legal stuff, and then autographed promo pictures. It's odd and kind of chilling. I mean, look at this. The old signed photo there.
Wow.
Memorial Day
1990.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's crazy in itself, but so that's another. Those are both examples of the other thing that I've learned is when I do these books on little bands that no one's ever done a book on, they actually do really well, better than books on big bands that have had lots of books on them. But you think, they sold multi-platinum, this and that. Oh, there must be enough people who want a book if I write one on them. No, write a book on Riot or Accept or Max Webster, and it'll sell good.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like I said, a lot of us don't know the whole story of these bands. Sure, we know their music and listen to it, but to actually read about all the, goings on, I mean, that's worth the price right there. So my number 2 is a 3-pack.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Right.
That's fair.
I mean, that's if you're a Maiden fan, that's the ultimate book. You got basically 3 decades, 700 pages, and you talk not only about Maiden, you go in depth, especially in the second book in the 90s with Bruce's solo career.
Yeah.
You also talk about what right up to the present day, what Diano and what Blaze Bailey are doing. I mean, it was, and I've been a Maiden fan since the 81 when Killers came out. So for me, it's such a great read, and I totally highly recommend anybody out there, if you want to get caught up on the world of Maiden. It goes right up until the COVID. You have what Rod Smallwood says about the whole legacy of the Beast Tour being shut down. Yeah. So it's very, very current. So well done on that one.
And that's, you know, certain things go out of print. Like I had that old Iron Maiden Day by Day go out of print. And it's like, okay, well, why don't I write a regular book about Maiden where I do it my usual way? And then the idea is I'm just going to write this as long as it goes. And if I can get a few volumes out of it, I may as well do it that way. And that's why it made sense. And as a project, it's done pretty good. So
it's done very good. It's a great read. I keep flipping through it. So my number one, Martin, are you ready for this?
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
I bought that one in Toronto.
Yeah.
Okay. Folks, if you want the definitive book on 80s metal, hair metal is that. This is where it's at. This book is hardcover. Every single page in it is glossy. So you go to 1986, and then you're getting the pictures of, well, Mikey's band there. There's Kick-Axe, Rock the World.
Keep talking. I can hear you. I'm gonna grab another gin and tonic. So keep going.
Keep going, Deke. Keep going. Yeah, you're right. Kick-Axe was one of my big bands in 2019.
But you go through this whole book. Martin starts it from the 1950s, as that's when Aquanet, the hairspray,
was invented.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And it goes right up to now. Mike and Meat. This is the rock trivia question for you guys. What happened on September 24th, 1991?
September 24th. Use Your Illusion 1 and 2.
Nope.
Wow.
Nirvana went to number 1.
That's when Nevermind was released. You got it. So, and the whole changing of the tide. So, yeah,
it changed everything.
Changing of the guard.
That's
what I did in the Thrash trilogy too. Like we had this thing that we were doing at Banger Films when we did Metal Evolution, and the whole idea was the changing of the guard with Nirvana was also the peak of thrash, in conjunction with like Clash of the Titans, right?
Yeah.
That big tour. So I ended that whole thrash trilogy that I did with Clash of the Titans, and it more or less is the Nirvana. But the Guns N' Roses coming out at the same time as Nirvana is a crazy story, right?
Yeah, and you know what? This book, Martin, is so well put together. I mean, you did such a killer job. Like this book to me is gold. I mean, I don't even leave it lying around in my house, man. Like I make sure I know where it is 24/7.
Right.
So thanks for basically putting a good portion of my high school years right into this with the circus ads, the Hit Parader ads.
Yeah.
You talk to everybody, and it's such a well done book. So, folks, that's my top 5. So thank you, Martin, for the words
awesome.
and the book.
Cool.
So I'm going to let these other guys have a turn now. I'm going to shut up for a while.
Well, if you don't mind, I have a top 5.
Hey.
And my top 5, unlike Deke's top 5, my top 5 only leads into one question. But I would like to tell you the top 5 albums that I bought because of a 10 out of 10 review in Riff Kills Man.
Cool. Okay, let's hear it.
Because, regardless of the books that came later, this is the book that was with me all that time, right? It was my handbook. I've told this story before. I used to keep it on my desk at work just to reference stuff. As I was writing my knockoff POPOFF Amazon reviews, I'm like, what did the master actually say about this album before I go and make a fool of myself?
The
But
master's
anyway.
writing really sucked though at that time, and that's why I was so embarrassed by that book over the years, right? Because I just kind of went for it, and then I kept thinking back. I was 30 when I did that. I had an English degree already, and I was a terrible writer. But that's what happens when you self-publish something, right? You put your first thing out there, and it sucks, but your opinions come through, and that's fine. But the writing is horrible, and so I'm embarrassed by a lot of it. Probably most of my opinions haven't changed very much,
Right.
But we did so much patchwork on that book to make the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s version, right? Like redoing them, and then as I'm fixing these up and saying, "What an idiot," like this sounds terrible, right? And I would try to fix it, and I go, "Why don't I just rewrite the whole damn review but from scratch," right? And sometimes I actually did that when I did the 70s, 80s, 90s, like split them up, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny. That's and Neil Peart said that about himself with self-publishing, right? He went out and put those books out about biking around Africa and stuff, and then he totally resented it, regretted it, right? Because he just said, I was not ready to write and have that stuff out there. So I feel kind of the same way.
Yeah, there's something about the purity of that Ghost Rider book that I personally just love. But
that's later. He's got earlier ones that are about bicycling around Africa.
Isn't that the
Not
one?
Motorbiking around North America or wherever.
Was it the Masked Rider? The Africa one. I love the Africa one.
Masked Rider.
Yeah. I love the Africa one, but maybe it's just the setting. Mm-hmm. But here's my top 5 albums that I bought because of this book, a 10 out of 10 review in this book. Okay. Number 1, Thin Lizzy, Thunder and Lightning. Now, my first copy skipped. It was sold to me by Mr. Tom Morwood. But I replaced it promptly because what I heard was just kick-ass. It was what I wanted out of Thin Lizzy. Gillan, Double Trouble. That was a band that, because of this book, I was really kind of aware of. And I was aware of the difference between Gillan and the Ian Gillan Band because it's a significant difference.
Yeah.
Love, Hate, Blackout in the Red Room.
Cool.
I just bought that in 2020, but it was because this had cemented it in my brain. Anthrax, Sound of White Noise. Okay. And awesome. One band here that I actually just played the album today because apparently, according to this book, it is pretty much your favorite Canadian band ever. And that was the Sons of Freedom, the self-titled album. And right. It's kind of an album that I didn't really get for a lot of years, but I bought it because of this book, and I played it today. Mm-hmm. And I was reading your review, and I just wanted to point out a couple of things that you said on the song.
No, stop.
Oh, please, I have to. I have to. Is It Love? The song Is It Love? You talk about a discordant stun riff, and on This Is Tao, you say, it's like a sublime drift into an open ocean oil slick. And one thing I love about your writing that I struggle with personally is coming up with new ways to describe music, to describe songs. I can talk about hammering riffs and machine gun snare drums and all this stuff, but how do you keep coming up with new ways to describe a song in your current work?
I mean, you don't because so much stuff has broken into subgenres where there's so many albums coming out all the time. Like people, it gets really hard to talk about power metal albums and distinguish them from each other, or even Dream Theater albums and distinguish them from each other. So it's really hard to. That's why I don't really write reviews anymore. There's just too much stuff coming out all the time, and it all sounds so the same, and you can't screw up producing an album anymore. I mean, productions are perfect, so you have to have that awkward discussion about perfect production. Pete and I on Sea of Tranquility the other day were struggling about these Accept albums that come out in the Mark Tornillo era, right? Mm-hmm. Where they all sound perfect, awesome, great. The riffs are incredible. Andy Sneap's production is incredible, but they all sound kind of the same, and it's hard to distinguish.
But even I know you don't write reviews so much anymore, but even in your current books, you still do like an album breakdown. You talk about an album in detail, and I'm continually blown away by the words that you discover to describe songs. Like galumphing, soupy. In the Van Halen book, those were two words that just jumped out at me that I'm like, man, I wish I'd thought of the word galumphing. And then in the Scorpions book, you describe Klaus on one song as a lecherous lounge lizard. It's like, man, I wish I'd thought of these phrases. And yet you keep coming up with every single book. There's something fresh.
Well, Mike, one thing that has happened is that when I had to do Clash, all the albums, all the songs, Led Zeppelin, all the albums, all the songs, when I had to write 400 to 500 words on every single song from the entire catalog, that analyzing of everything made me realize that, okay, so when I write the next book, which will be like a regular book, I'll have this new level, higher level of analyzing, along with outside press, along with my own interviews, and those things together, and along with factoids, all of that together makes a book possible. So I started doing that even more recently based on the Clash and the Zeppelin book, putting on headphones and just like hearing what's going on the left channel versus the right channel, what's mono, what's coming right down the middle. What is that, a tambourine? Is that a dobro? Like, what's going on here? So I had to do all that with the Zeppelin book. And so that's made me now, like, you know, even get more so that way. You know, I'm not talking about the flowery language, but I'm talking about just like, okay, well, why don't I just really get deep into describing each song as I go along? Kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, it's something I very, very much enjoy about each and every book that you've put out. You mentioned The Sea of Tranquility, which I guess is a good segue to go over to my buddy Eric here, who is a junkie for, as I said, your YouTube presence. So, Eric, why don't you take it away?
Yes. Hi, Martin.
Hi, Eric.
It is very nice to talk to you. And yeah, about a year and a half ago, I basically stumbled upon Pete Pardo and was really liking it. And I got to say that it's been a great fit that you have joined the pack and been a regular on there, and I've been enjoying it. Through that, I've been checking out the Contrarians and Guitar Hack and everything. But I really, really like what the two of you do together. I'm kind of curious how that started, because I saw that I think your first one that you did was doing a commentary on the Anthem book that you wrote maybe about 7-8 months ago. But now it's been a regular thing. So how did that start?
Well, let me think. So Pete and I knew each other through the years, and I guess I wrote a few things for Sea of Tranquility, and I would watch the show every once in a while, and then he just reached out one day, and I guess we just got in a groove. I guess he'd been going for a while and had other guests on and stuff, and I used to watch it and stuff and really like it. But yeah, he just reached out one day, and maybe it went well. And he thought, let's do this again, and let's do it again. And it's been really regular. I mean, we did one this morning. We did the Tubes this morning. We did Robert Plant a few days ago. We did Accept a few days before that, right? We got another one coming up soon. So it's a lot of fun. I just love doing it. I mean, I love hearing his. I love when we rank these albums. I'm really curious to see where his rankings is going to end up. Like, what's the next one he's going to flip up and say, this is my number 5. You know, it's really cool. And I'm just amazed. Like, I could never do a show like that because I'm amazed at the scope and the range he has. And I told him, I might have even said, it might have been this morning or the other morning, or, you know, I said, like, for the first time ever, Pete, like, we've reached a new plateau. You've done a worst to first ranking on a band I've never even heard of. And then he did another one, this Ashbury band. I've never heard of them, right? So, I mean, the range of stuff he knows and can do. Obviously, with some of them, probably there's some pretty decent homework that goes into it. But in terms of the number of bands he knows and the albums he knows, it's unparalleled. It's crazy.
Indeed,
so, yeah, it's got an amazing thing going there.
It's pretty crazy. So before I get to my top 5, I'll mention my honorable mention one, which is the Accept one that was talked about earlier. And I have a quick question on that. That was 16 albums. So exactly how do you prepare for that? I just don't see how you could listen to all 16, or do you select a few? I'm just curious, what you do to start all that.
You mean to prepare for going on Pete's
Yeah.
show with one of these things? Well, okay,
Yeah.
so with Accept, for example, I wrote a damn Accept book, so I know my Accept pretty well, right? So with most of the bands that I say yes to, because I say no to many, many of them, right? Because if it's too much homework and I'm not feeling it and I can't just like spout off the top of my head, I'm not going to do that band, right?
Fair enough.
So, you know, I'm saying no to a lot of things too. But so with Accept, it was literally 2/3 or 3/4 of it, I didn't have to listen to another note. So that's good. And then what I do is when I'm ranking those things is I'll just start a Word document and I'll just pop the albums in place and put that one above and that one below and that one above and that one below. And all of a sudden I got a list, and then I'll just number them, make sure I caught everything and I didn't forget one. So with Accept, I did go back and listen to quite a bit, actually. I went back and listened to all the Mark Ternillo albums again. And as I told Pete on the show, to bloody figure out how to differentiate them, I had to listen to them really fast next to each other, because that's what you got to do, you know, to tell like one production from the next, Andy Sneap. And then I also went back and listened to the quote unquote black and white period, you know, Death Row, Predator, whatever the other one's called, Objection Overruled, right? So those three together. Other than that, I mean, I actually did play even the first two again, but I didn't play the middle ones that I knew super well. So and Robert Plant was the same kind of thing. Robert Plant, I had to go play all the recent ones over again, and so did Pete. You know, we have to do some homework to get this straight. Right?
I'm sure,
yeah. So that's
cool.
it. So a little bit of homework, but I'll say no if it's a ton of homework.
In that show, you seem to hint at a band that you used to drum in called Torque. And in it, you said you played Restless and Wild, which is my favorite Accept song. That must be one really, really fun song to drum.
Yeah, it is. Fun song to drum, easy song to drum too, but it's got nice little rhythmic changes and stuff, and little really cool accents, you know, in it and stuff. So yeah, we just had a band that played the bars for one summer when I came back from university, kind of thing. And but I could still remember what the set list was, and I remember even telling Billy Gibbons, you know, when we were talking once about Eliminator, you know, I said we refused to play all the hits off it, but we played Bad Girl, and I got the 6 because they were the 2 heaviest songs on it, and he got a laugh out of that.
That's cool. Okay, so I guess my top 5. So we'll go here. These are my 5 personal favorite videos that you've done on Sea of Tranquility. Okay. So I'm going to give you my top 5 here. My number 5 was the ranking the albums of XTC. Really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great departure. Basically, you and Pete said this too. It's kind of a departure for both of you, kind of known more for, you know, the hard rock and the metal aspect of it. But to do a band like that, it's completely different, and it's just very interesting. And it's a band I love, so I loved hearing all that. It was great.
Yeah, I mean, Peter and I even mentioned that this morning or the other day, and he brought it. Actually, it was when we did the tubes today. He brought up the XTC again. He has fond memories of doing that one too, and that is my favorite of all the ones we've done. Absolutely. Because it was just so fresh. I've never talked about XTC with anyone, and we just went off and had a great time talking about that great band, you know. And people in the comments loved it; they were appreciative with that we did it. And then at one point, you know, we saw a few comments about a couple of old metalheads trying to wrap their head around XTC, which is funny as well, right? Because it's true, right? It's a couple of total metalheads, old guys. And we're talking about XTC, which is really odd, but it was so refreshing, and we had a great time doing it. I play XTC all the time. So
yeah, they're a great band. That was a great episode. I loved it. Okay, so my number 4 is a series of 4. There were so many that you did 4 episodes of a rant with bands with consistently bad album covers, and I found that very interesting. You had to do 4 shows because there's just so many of them. I'm curious if you remember just briefly a couple of lead contenders in there.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun too, and it got a good response. And it was fun to do because, you know, looking at album covers, everybody can interpret what's going on there all the time. But I've always ranted and raved to anybody who ever, you know, Pete uses this word rant, and it's kind of interesting. I think it helps raise the numbers when he says rant, but sometimes we're not ranting about things. But in this album covers one, it kind of is a rant. Like, how dare you guys have such crappy album covers? But the ones that always have come to mind with me that I just never forget is Foreigner, AC/DC, Van Halen, Def Leppard. Those are some of my least favorite of all time. It just goes just one to the next to the next to the next. It's just like, this is stupid, right?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to watch. I know that Pete picked the Scorpions, which was a really good choice in there too.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So number three is another one that was labeled a rant, and it was underrated bands. And in that show, you chose 3 bands. You chose Love Hate and Stars, and you also chose King's X, which to me is the epitome of, you know, an underrated band that just does not get the credit that they deserve. And even on Sea of Tranquility, because, you know, I know that Pete Pardo has gotten a lot of requests to do King's X stuff, and he just doesn't do it, and that's just the way it is. But I found in there was a comment you said there about how the other bands always love King's X.
Yeah.
Right? They're like a band's choice. And it's very interesting that you said that, because I've seen King's X once in my life live, and it was at the El Macombo, of all places. It was in 1999, and I believe that was the Tapehead tour, which I think is your favorite album by them.
I was at that show.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
Well, I was going to bring
who
up
else
that
was at that show, Eric? You know who else?
Don Big Darrell, and Vinnie Paul.
And Phil.
Yeah.
And Phil.
And Phil, that's funny that you said that, because it's the first thing I thought when you made that comment. And yeah, I was standing pretty much right beside them. It was just wow.
Yeah.
Crazy. You were there too.
I talked to Phil, and Phil was saying how, like, when he was kind of like kicked out and homeless or whatever, he was living with Doug Pinnick. Wow. And so, like,
I didn't know that.
And stuff. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it was really cool. Yeah, that was a great show. What a great band live. And I think I've seen them I'm thinking at least twice. 3. Okay, I'm up to 3. At least 3 times I've seen them live. And they're like progressive metal, really. Live, they're so tight, and they can be very progressive. I don't know what that one song is anymore, but the one that stops and starts and throws in all the stuff, and then they stop, and then they do more, and then they stop. There's one song like that, and you can
Moan Jam.
Is it? Yeah,
Moan Jam, I think.
Blows your mind when you see them do this, right? But they're so talented, and you're right, Eric. I mean, they're the epitome. They're the first band you think of when you think of underrated. But I gotta say one other thing. So when I say no to Pete, there's also tons of bands that Pete is so frustrated that get suggested to him that he can't do, because he doesn't feel like he feels them in his heart. So he has to learn much about them, right? And there's, you know, I was talking to him today about Tea Party. He doesn't know about Tea Party. I'm trying to like turn him on to Tea Party. But it's like, you know, I said to him, like, I'm not asking you to do a show on Tea Party. I'm just saying you'd probably like these guys if you check them out and stuff. There we go.
Yeah.
And so I was telling him, you know, about the, you know, extolling the virtues of Tea Party. But it's like I get suggested all the time, even to do episodes of History in 5 Songs, where my first objection is always I have to do too much homework, and I just can't go off the top of my head about them because I don't know them that well.
Right.
So Pete's got a few like that. Even though Pete's like the most well-versed guy in the world when it comes to a million bands he knows so well, there are a few that he didn't pay attention to.
Yeah, I get that. That makes sense. Okay, my number 2. My number 2 was really cool. I really like the Hudson Valley Squares that they do with a whole bunch of guests, and you were on one as a 9th person, you know, on there for a favorite vocal performance of all time.
Right.
Thing. And I really, really enjoyed your take on that, because basically exactly like you said during it, that you purposely didn't pick, the Hotel California and the My Generation type songs, like the Victim of Changes and the Queen of the Reich, which a lot of people were picking, and that's cool. I mean, of course it is. But you chose like Dusty Hill with great vocals and Neil Fallon, which makes sense because I know you're a huge Clutch fan, and Neil Fallon is a great singer and great lyrics. But it's interesting too, because one of your honorable mentions on there was something called These Trails, and I checked it out, and I checked out most of the album, and it's certainly quite different. It was very interesting. Like the Hawaiian aspect, everything. It almost sounded a little bit like the Manson girls were sounding, in a courtroom.
Exactly. I've never, and that's awesome that you say that. That's hilarious.
I'm not making fun of it in a bad way. It's just got a quirkiness to it that is a little creepy and enjoyable. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, that one again. So I knew there were a bunch of people on there, and some of those bases would get covered. And it's just a ludicrous question, like your favorite vocal performance of all time. There's hundreds of them for guys like us who know a lot of music, right?
Yeah.
So I thought you could pick almost anything. I may as well talk about something fresh. And that was the whole idea, because and then I knew what the top ones would be. And a few of them got mentions, other ones didn't, but yeah. And then I thought also, okay, I better not be too weird here. So I got ZZ Top in there, I got Clutch in there, and then I got Grateful Dead for this crazy thing. But the crazy thing I pursued way more when I did an episode of History in 5 Songs, where I did 5 Females, A Weird Convergence. And when I did that episode, it was These Trails, Trader Horn, The Ghost from Birmingham, 1971, Crazy, and Agrutna, and Search Party, which is Jesus Freak stuff from 1969. So that episode of History in 5 Songs was me going way past the Donna from the Grateful Dead into These Trails and those things. And, that episode didn't do as well as other episodes, and I knew it wouldn't, but I had to bare my heart and talk about these weird. The weird thing about the Weird Conversions, WYRD, as in Weird Folk, was that all these albums that I played dozens of times, if not hundreds of times, Eric, in the case of These Trails, they all had dual male and female vocals. And I just discovered that after, and I went, whoa, I have no idea how that happened. But my favorite female vocalists of all time seemed to be on albums with dual male and female vocals. It was so strange. So that's what that whole episode of the podcast is about. Yeah,
that was interesting. Okay, well, my number one is going to be interesting because it's very recent, actually. We found out about this on the weekend, and I sat down to watch my number one, which is ranking the albums of Robert Plant. And it's funny because I'm watching it, and I saw at first that you had shaken and stirred at like 9 out of 11, and I remember thinking, well, that's pretty accurate for me because I've never really got that album. And as soon as you got to number 2 and you said Pictures at 11, I started getting excited because I'm like, finally somebody realizes that the Principle of Moments is one great fucking album and needs to be praised. And like, it's funny because most people who are into Zeppelin, they always quote, Pictures at 11. And
I noticed that. Yeah.
And to me, I have a very similar feelings to you. There might be 1, maybe 2 Zeppelin albums that I like better than a Principle of Moments, and I would easily put a Principle of Moments in a top 20 albums of all time for me. I love it. I love it so much.
Wicked.
I was watching the episode kind of, with my fist in the air, cheering, like somebody totally agrees with me, and I just love how much you love that album. It was inspiring.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. That was really cool. But I agree with you. When I read the comments later, there were a lot of people saying the first one is the best
Yep.
one.
Yep.
But I went and actually played it before I did the episode, and I kept going, nah, I don't want to hear him doing this like tossed off funky kind of thing. Like, what's going on here, right? And then I realized there's quite a few songs on here I'm not a huge fan of, right? But Principle of Moments, absolutely. Right after Physical Graffiti, it's in there. There's nothing even close. And when we did the Zeppelin episode, it's the Zeppelin on Guitar Hack with Hack, right? I remember one point in that where Pete went, this one's up here and the next one, it's a big drop down. When he went Physical Graffiti, big drop down. I thought that's exactly how I feel with the whole idea of Physical Graffiti to Principle of Moments really close and then a big drop down. So that's when I say it's not even close. Like it's Physical Graffiti, neck and neck with Principle of Moments, big drop down to anything else.
Well, it's funny because we've done a Led Zeppelin ranking of the albums on this show previous, and I guarantee you that there are a lot of people watching right now who are wanting to completely disagree with my take and probably yours. But yeah, it was inspiring to me, and it's funny. I really appreciate all these lockdown times that I've had, enjoying you and Pete and all the other people on there, and I'm starting to get into the Guitar Hack and the Contrarians. And one thing I'm curious about, one episode that Pete did, it was like a 10-part thing where he was in every episode he was naming 10 bands that have only one album. And through that, he turned me on to the Pace Ashton Lord album, which is now one of my favorite albums ever. I love it so much. I'm guessing that you're you're familiar with that album.
Semi-familiar. I know it's pretty good, and the recording is amazing on it. It sounds pretty heavy and to the point, but I believe I think I did an episode of History in 5 Songs. If I haven't, I should. But I thought I did. Maybe I'm dreaming this, but I did an episode, or I've thought about the idea of how all those guys went crazy fusion all at once, and they all went weird, right? Even Ritchie Blackmore with the first album is a tiny, tiny, tiny bit fusion, but you had Ian Gillan Band, you had Pace Ashton Lord, Roger Glover went off on a weird tangent. Even David Coverdale on the first two is a little bit funky and weird, right? So they all like lost their minds for a minute, sort of thing. And Pace Ashton Lord, I remember as being one of the ones that was a little more on point than all the other ones, right?
Yeah, I really like the album. And just as a last point, I just want to ask you a kind of a trivia-ish question, like Mike just got one earlier on Facebook, like today sometime. Do you know the connection between the Pace Ashton Lord album and Principle of Moments?
Let's see. Pace Ashton Lord. Is it Jazz Woodruff? I don't know.
No,
Jazz. Let me think. Pace Ashton Lord. So it wouldn't be a drummer. I don't think. Is it something to do with production? I mean, it's called Malice in Wonderland. We know the connection between Nazareth and that album.
Yeah. No, it is something different.
No, tell me, Eric. Go ahead.
Bass player. Paul Martinez.
Paul Martinez. Wow.
Paul Martinez is on the first 3 Plant albums, and he plays bass on that album.
That is cool.
I couldn't believe it when I first heard it. I was like, wow, I've never heard of him being on anything else, and all of a sudden I find out that he was on this album.
That's really neat. That's really cool. Yeah, he's a guy I should interview one day. I don't think I've ever interviewed him. I don't think I ever tried to ever track him down, but it's cool. Funny. I have all these I have all these like my Zeppelin interview archive is embarrassing. I mean, literally, I got to ask Robert Plant one question once in a group thing. I got to attend a Jimmy Page interview. I got to interview John Paul Jones 2 or 3 times, and he was incredible. But other than that, there's Richie Hayward, there's Jez Woodruff, a few other things along the way. But I would love to talk to some of those old Plant guys. I mean, it should happen one day. I mean, because I love those albums so much. I mean, Robbie Blunt is so unreachable. You can't get Robbie, but I would like to talk to Robbie one day. It's a shame. Like, these guys are going to die one day. Like, get your story out there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Get it
Very
out.
cool.
You know, when we did the ZZ Top documentary, it was ridiculous. We kept going after
Great
Bill
movie.
Ham, their legendary manager, right?
Yeah.
And he kept saying no, and then he died, right? So we never got Bill Ham. So nobody's got Bill Ham's story, right?
That's too bad.
Because he never talked. So, you know, he had this big archive, and I know a staffer or two got down and got to see the archive, which was apparently amazing. But no, I mean, his story is just not known. So, and we'll never get it now.
Well, thanks a lot for listening to my top 5. It was very interesting to hear your take on it, and I guess it's up to Mike now.
Well, I'll hand it back to Deke because again, Deke is the one who set this up. So, Deke, why don't you take us out? You got anything you want to ask Martin before we go?
Yeah, Martin, I have one more question for you.
Sure.
Of all the books you've written on all the different bands, have you ever heard any feedback from them? Like, hey, thanks for writing our story, or hey, thanks for putting us out there and talking about it. Like, does anybody ever say, hey, thanks? You know, because
it's pretty rare. You know, some say thanks. Some just acknowledge that you did it, and it's pretty neutral. The odd one says, oh, you got this wrong and you got that wrong. I remember with the Motley Crue one, there was kind of a nasty story where they like threatened to sue the publisher for even doing a book on them and all this stuff. And yet,
oh man,
had other of my books on his bookshelf and all this, which were, he had the Iron Maiden one, which is just like the Maiden. It's funny, like a trivia note. If you go on Amazon.com and look up the Motley Crue book that I did, it says written by Motley Crue and Martin Popoff. And the royalties had to go to Motley Crue and all this stuff. But no, rarely have I gotten any sort of like, oh, thank you, really, or positivity. And I've heard recently that, for example, Ted Nugent hasn't read the book I did on Ted. Because he thinks it's really negative, and he's heard little things about that are negative. And it's like, I'm telling this guy who's a buddy of Ted's, who's worked with Ted all over through the years as a lighting director, just interviewed him recently and got some stories from him. But, you know, he said, like, I told him that it's actually a super positive book on Ted. And I'm one of the few guys in the whole world who thinks Craveman and Love Grenade are 2 of the greatest things he ever did, including Shut Up and Jam, actually.
I love Shut Up and Jam.
Good record, yeah.
Love it.
Not the new one, because it's short and it's stupid. But Shut Up and Jam is perfectly fine. So it's like I loved doing that Ted book because I loved the new music, and in a lot of cases that's not the case, right? So I don't know. You know, honestly, I mean, it's been a whole lot of almost nothing, almost like no, you know, no reaction really in most cases.
That's the thing. Like, your books are composed of all the interviews you've done, so it's not like you're fabricating anything. It's what you've actually spoken to that artist about or band about. So,
and it's positive. I'm a fan. I'm not here to like dig through the dirt or cause anybody any trouble in their relationships or marriages.
You don't
like that.
No.
So I mean, I'm just a fanboy, right?
I mean, I got into Nugent because of you.
Yeah.
So there you go. I know you're not negative against Nugent.
Yeah. Well, Martin, you know what?
So
thanks.
Much.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Sorry,
No, we can all thank them. But thanks for taking some time out on a Friday night to come and talk to us, guys. Perhaps maybe down the road we could have you back on, and we could
sure
another angle with you. And
this was a blast. This is really cool. You guys set up.
Maybe do a ranking of the albums of King's X.
I would be down for a King's X theme. Okay,
There
so
we
we'll
go.
put a pin in that
Yeah.
for next time. And Martin, thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Yes.
And,
thank
stay safe and keep on rocking, my friend.
Very cool.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thanks, Martin.
Okay.
Take care, man.
We'll
Take
talk
care.
later.
Thank you, Martin.
Yeah.
Take care.
Ciao.
You.
Bye-bye.
Well, boys, that was some of the most fun I've had on a Friday night.
Yeah, very cool. I hope I didn't go too long.
Well,
No.
you know what? I think we heard a lot of great information, regardless of who asked the questions tonight. We could not get to so many questions in the comments, but I did want to get to Brian's because he asked me twice, so he really wanted to know about Pi, and I'm glad Pi's doing well because that was actually something. There was
Who was
some
that?
Yeah,
concern.
that was very cool.
There
Was that Zinger? Was that Zinger that was
That was
on?
Brian,
Uh-huh, nice.
Nautica Singer.
Yeah.
He asked that question in the comments back on Tuesday,
Yeah.
I think, and I said I can't make any promises. I'm going to get to that, but
No,
we all
good.
we want Pi to be okay. There was some concern for his health a few years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was very cool, actually.
Yeah, Martin
Yeah.
was that was awesome, man. That totally lived up to the hype.
Well, if only this could be a thing. If only the amount of homework that guy does for his shows.
Mhm.
I mean,
Fuck, can you believe that?
no, I
Yeah.
do believe. You know what's funny though? I laughed. I thought to myself, "Oh shit!" When you said, "How do you listen to all the Accept albums?" He goes, "Well, first of all, I wrote a book on Accept." And I'm like,
Yeah,
"Oh
that
shit!"
was funny.
You know what? I guess he's heard all the Accept.
That was funny. Well, yeah. Well, I wasn't asking if he had heard it. I was asking.
No,
you
but you know what I mean. Like that's the kind of thing that he could. I'm impressed that he doesn't just throw a list together in his sleep. Like
But
he
you know
actually
what?
does do the homework for it. He does play some of those albums, and I guess he does have a point about the Mark Ternillo, the Andy Sneap era. There is a sort of sound alikeness to the albums.
Yeah.
And
But
if anybody
I
could-
still love them.
yeah.
Like I love current day Accept, but there's a certain flatness to the discography. It's not like the peaks and valleys and side roads and twists and turns of classic metal bands. Everything today
No.
is a little bit more, like a Judas Priest album, very streamlined, very straightforward compared to the twists and turns of the olden days.
That's
Same
what
thing with
happens when
Accept.
That's what happens when those old metalers hit 60. It's like just trying to punch some gas and get some life and just keep chugging. So
Yeah.
that's like I told him. My Accept is only 4 albums. That's my scope.
Right.
But I still enjoyed the book because there's a lot of stuff there I didn't know.
New
Yeah.
Accept album in 2 weeks. Yeah. Can't wait for that one. Well, I guess I have to wait for that one 2 weeks.
So you were getting lots of comments or questions in that?
There have been plenty of comments, lots from people that I'm sorry I couldn't get to you. There's new people here. Bass player 77. The Police Show was great on Sea of Tranquility. Stefan.
It was. That was a great show.
Stefan liked the top 10 progressive albums. Kevin
That was
liked
another
the
great
AC/DC deep dives. Yeah, so I'm really sorry that I couldn't get to these comments. Aaron's here. Harrison is still hanging in here. John T. Snow, Rob Daniels. So sorry we couldn't get to all those comments, but we knew that was, when you only have an hour, that's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
But some of us, well, me anyway, I don't know about you two guys. I'll be back next week. We're going to be doing the top Nigel Tufnell top 10 riffs of the 1970s. We're going to do a series of 3 shows. We're going to do the 70s, the 80s, 90s, and beyond. So
What?
you guys are. We're
I
going to
thought
do.
you already had. I thought you already had. I saw your order and it didn't say that.
No, I'm telling you. I'm telling you this now that we're not going to just do the 70s. In the future, at some point, we will come back, reconvene, and do the 80s, and then we'll do at another future point do the 90s. Because I don't want to.
So this,
Deke and I talked about this a little bit. T-Bone is aching to come back, so we're actually going to have T-Bone on. I think
2
what was
weeks.
2 weeks from now.
2 weeks.
So we don't want.
Not only are we going to have T-Bone back in 2 weeks, we're going to have an unboxing.
Yep. A decanning.
I'm going to do the unboxing. T-Bone's going to do decanning about decanning.
Of a beer.
You know?
a
I thought it was
signature.
going to be a deep. I mean, wow, I thought it was going to be a deep pantsing.
No. But anyway, long story short,
That's a Southern Ontario thing. We don't
Right.
do that up in Northern Ontario. And plus, we're going to have a world premiere video,
right,
Kurt River video, on. So
right.
Oh.
be there, be square.
So it's riffs of the 1970s next week.
Right. We're going to do it. Nigel Tufnell top 10 riffs in the 1970s. And one of the reasons I want to do this show is we've talked before about Mike Slan. He's a really good guitar player out of San Diego. He loved our Van Halen list show that we did several weeks ago. And
yeah, that's what I thought. That's the guy who was on, right?
He has not been on yet. Mike Slan has never been on the show. But he's going to be on next week.
That's what I thought. I thought.
And what I hope to do is as we talk about some of these riffs, he's going to pull out his acoustic guitar and maybe demonstrate how to play some of these riffs. Is what I'm
That's
hoping.
awesome.
So that's next. Hey! No. Hey, Martin, we're just talking about what we're doing next week. You are more than welcome to tune in next week, Martin. Believe me, you are more than welcome. But we're just
he was welcome. He was welcome to talk more on here if he wanted to.
I assume, we wanted you to get back to your life. You gave us an hour of your time, which is very, very generous. Oh my God, he's going to keep listening. Well, we're not going to keep going for much longer because there's a hockey game on that I need to. There's another new person. Hello from Norway. Hello.
Nice.
But anyways, so next week we're going to talk about the riffs of the 70s. We're going to have Mike Slan on to hopefully demonstrate how some of these riffs are played.
Nice.
Following week, we're going back to T-Bone and Thunder Bay, talking about some beer, talking about some, I don't know, we're going to unbox something. And we're also gonna, can I mention what album we're going to do the focus on? Yeah.
Yeah, why not? Because if anybody else wants to listen to it.
Yeah. Last time we had T-Bone on, we did a deep dive into David Lee Roth's Skyscraper.
Mike, wait a second. Wait a second. Let me get it. I got it on vinyl.
And this time...
I'll show and tell.
This time when we get Mr. Forget hockey, go Bills. This time we're going to do a deep dive onto an album that T-Bone personally picked and happens to be one of Deke's favorites, but is not one of my favorites. So, this will be an interesting deep dive because we're going to be doing an album that came out in 1985.
Keep talking.
It is by an American band, a quintet. Yes, we're going to be talking about Aerosmith's Done with Mirrors with T-Bone. We're going to do a deep dive.
Really? That's neat.
This is something that we talked about Hina during the David Lee Roth show.
Yeah.
It got a lot of praise. So that's what we've got coming
guitars.
up. Yeah.
Hey, Martin, thanks for still watching, buddy.
Thank you, Martin.
For sure.
Yeah. Thanks again, man.
Definitely going to try to see if we could possibly do a ranking the albums of King's X, or in our way of doing it, the Nigel Tufnell
we call
top 10 list.
Right. That's what we call it, a Nigel Tufnell top 10 list, because we always have 11 on our lists. So why not?
Yeah.
Well, boys, thank you for coming out. I know Eric didn't necessarily want Martin to see this music video because you might be a little self-conscious about it, but I wanted to play. I like to play music. I like to play a song every show. And it just so happens the next song that we're playing stars Mr. Eric Litwiller on lead vocals.
This song is going to end up on a list of Martin's top 10 worst songs he's ever heard.
It's very possible that the next song will end up. But we're going to play it.
Being self-deprecating.
On the LeBrain train, we have Max the Axe from his 2019 album Status Electric, featuring Mr. Eric Litwiller, Uncle Meat, on lead vocals. This is the track, Next Plane to Vegas. I thank you all for watching. Martin, thank you for continuing to hang out. Boys, it's been a pleasure, and I will see some of you next week. Next Plane to Vegas by Max the Axe on the LeBrain train.
How'd you like my penis?
We had a comment from Chris Sarr that he wants to hear God's on the Radio, and it just so happens I still have that song locked and loaded. So for Chris Sarr, Max the Axe featuring Eric Litwiller on lead vocals, God's on the Radio on the LeBrain train.